Thank you so much for joining us today for the session Mastering Growth Mindset the Heartfulness Way. We have, and welcome to people who have joined via Blue Jeans. That's the camera. We like to personalize. So we're here to welcome Joshua Pollock. Thank you so much for coming to Expedia. I have a few words. He's a multi-talented person, so I possibly cannot remember things about him. So I'm going to read up a short description about him. So Joshua Pollock is a thought leader, lecturer, a heartfulness meditation trainer, and the co-author of the best-selling book, The Heartfulness Way. That's the book you'll be getting towards the end of the session, by the way. He's conducted multiple meditation classes across the United States, India, Europe, and appeared on ABC, NBC, and CBS. An accomplished classical violinist, Joshua has performed internationally as a soloist and chamber musician and collaborated with celebrated composer A.R. Rahman on numerous films, including Gajani and Delhi 6. He currently resides in New Delhi. So he's actually here for us, guys. So it's amazing. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thanks.
Please welcome.
Okay. Hi.
Hey, Sriram, one thing here.
Yeah.
Can we record this session? Can we record this session?
Yes, it's being.
Some people are
Yes,
asking for
this is being
recording.
recorded.
Recording has started.
Thank you for catching the bug. Oh, all right. Are you guys able to see us? Yes. People on Blue Jeans.
Yes, they can.
Okay, so not everything is gone the other way. All right, so we're going to ask some questions to Joshua, and we'll have a short meditation session towards the end, and then we'll open up open up for questions from all of you based on whatever you have to share. So Joshua, welcome again. So what is
Thank
this
you.
heartfulness, and what's this Heartfulness Way book about?
Let's see. Can you hear me? Does this work? I can't. Okay. I can't hear anything, so. Heartfulness. What is it all about? It's something I have come here to practically demonstrate to you, actually. So I can explain a little bit about it, of course. I think you'll get more out of your own experience of it, for sure. This is definitely something where I do not want you to take away my words, but to take away your own feeling and experience of it, and form your own conclusion based on that. This is very much an experiential practice, and it is a practice. This is a practice, meditation practice, where it's a very, very simple collection of practices, which can help us in so many ways. And I think that the reason that we even decide to take up meditation is something that will continue to change as we continue to practice. Most of the time when people start, I find that people often start in moments of some kind of crisis. I mean, why would somebody all of a sudden start doing anything? There has to be some catalyst, So usually when people take up meditation, there's some reason behind it. But then I think that reason keeps changing because you start becoming aware of further possibilities that it can offer. And I think our aspiration now maybe becomes a little higher and a little higher and a little higher as we go on and as we experience more of what it can provide us. Ultimately, you see, people a lot of time will say, I want to be able to focus better. Very practical reasons. Or I want to be able to not be a slave of my anxieties, or I want to have a little relief in my life from all of these stresses and problems. Very practical reasons. And then as time goes on, I almost feel as if it becomes almost a sacred thing in your life, in the sense that, let's say you have somebody that you care about, let's say your spouse or a family member or something, and when you sit with this person, you're not going to sit with them thinking, what will they give me? Or what can I get from them? Because at that point it would almost be like sacrilege, because this is on the verge of manipulation now. You're only thinking, what can I get from this person? It isn't, you're not, in a relationship of love, you're thinking in a different kind of way. You're not even thinking, So in the same way with meditation, I think after a while we stop thinking, oh, let me do this because A, B, C, D, E. Let me do this because it'll give me peace, because it'll give me like this. So I think the idea of getting kind of goes away, and who knows where it ends. It keeps getting refined, this aspiration that we have, So
I see. So my next question is, we talk about meditation, but in a practical sense, we play multiple roles. Say, a person is an engineer or a corporate leader, or and simultaneously he's someone's husband, or she's someone's wife or sister or friend, and you have different roles to play. And when you say growth, it means different in each perspective. Like, what does it mean to grow as a friend? What does it mean to grow as a leader? What does it mean to grow as an engineer? So it feels impossible to be like a master of all trades, because we are playing different roles. So is there a universal definition of growth?
Well, I don't know if there's a universal definition of growth, but what I was just speaking about, aspiration, I feel that when you grow, right, a child grows into something. Growth always involves becoming something. Growth, it isn't about getting something. Growth is about becoming. And so the urge to grow, we can talk about aspiration instead of talking about ambition, for instance. Right?
I see.
So so I think when we have ambition, it's a very different thing than if we're aspiring to become something. Ambition is to get something, Aspiration is to become something. So I think true growth isn't possible as long as we're so focused on the trappings, so focused on, let's say, a title, or so focused on, remuneration, or whatever it happens to be. But I'll always be dissatisfied with myself. I'll always have some regret in my heart if in some way my potential is unexpressed. If there's potential there, but due to my inaction, I have not, allowed it to sort of come forth, and manifest and turn it into something. I think there'll be some heaviness in my heart at some point in my life. There'll be some sort of regret that I could have done something, but I didn't do something. So what is that for each one of us? I mean, it could be something different for me and something different for you. I think we have to perfect this art of listening to our own hearts, which will tell us the direction in which to go. You see, we can often go in various directions in our lives. I think sometimes we get diverted too. We listen to something else other than the true signal that's trying to, prick us from inside. Some desire gets in the way, or we get influenced by somebody. Who knows what it is? I think if we're really going to feel comfortable with ourselves, we have to perfect this art of listening to the heart. We have to understand that this is going to lead us somewhere.
So a follow-up question to that would be, so as an individual, say I develop the art of looking into my heart and finding the inspiration. But suppose I'm a leader, now I'm making decisions for others. Does the same logic hold true as well?
Why not?
Okay.
I mean, whatever we're doing is going to impact others anyway.
I see. Okay. So my next question is, it's actually the topic, growth mindset. Interestingly, this term, growth mindset, was coined by Dr. Carol Dweck. And this came out as a part of an experiment, actually. So she and her colleagues tried to find out research, they became interested in like students' attitudes about failures. So what they observed was there were some students, they rebounded, while some other students, they were devastated even by smaller setbacks. They just couldn't get past. Interestingly, I see the same pattern even amongst us grown-ups. Like, even if we have a goal, we get derailed so often, and so many distractions, so many limitations. It may be internal limitations or external or circumstantial. It could be so many things. How do we stay focused on this trajectory of, say, what we have to become, or what we have to grow into or evolve? How does one do that, or how does heartfulness help?
When you talk about handling failure, I think that many people understand these days that, it's such a cliche actually that failure is a stepping stone on the road to success, right? Isn't that such a cliche? So everybody knows this. But of course, still it impacts me, if I make some mistake, or if I fail in some way. I still feel the impact. This idea of perfection torments us, On one hand, we're encouraging growth and, encouraging becoming, moving towards perfection. And then, of course, that perfection is a tyranny at the same time, because of the pressure that it exerts over me. I think that, how we manage our ego is very important in all of this. It can't be a rigid thing where it can just shatter at the first sign that I'm not perfect, because if I'm trying to achieve some kind of excellence in some way, that's not going to be possible unless I become aware of my imperfections. He said I'm a musician. So most of my life has been about practicing. And when you're practicing, all you're doing is dealing with your imperfections. And the only way to do that, if you're not objectively listening to what you're playing, right? I'm a violinist, so if I'm playing and I'm just in some sort of fantasy world, imagining how good I sound, right? But not actually listening to the way I actually sound, it can be difficult to face that. People actually don't listen. That's the number one problem. It isn't about technique, it isn't about anything, it's simply that you're not listening objectively. There's some fear about what you're going to hear, So when I listen, then all of a sudden, this note jumps out at me, this is bumpy, this is out of tune, this squeaks. So all of a sudden these things are there and I think, oh my God, what am I going to do? There's so much imperfection here. But see, so I have to be able to accept not imperfections, but accept the presence of imperfections so that I can, start to work with them and move forward. And that's okay for myself. I'm okay to recognize my own imperfections. But what about when a second person comes along and tells me about my imperfections? That's the moment, actually, when this ego really kicks in. That's the moment when we really become defensive and say, what are you talking about? What about your imperfections? So then we get into arguments. So we have to, I think, if we really are looking for true growth, then all of a sudden we're going to, a time will come, I think, when even if somebody else comes and is such a critic, we're going to take that and fly with it. Take that criticism and fly with that criticism, and turn it into something positive instead of just being debilitated by it, And I think that's sort of the sign of a person who's very resilient in life. When not just criticism, but tragedies and challenges. When something truly bad can happen, but somehow you end up changing for the better as a result of it, instead of getting dragged down by it. You see examples. I mean, my own parents, I look at my own parents. And, my sister died when she was 16, right? And I see the difference between the reactions, My mother had always, they had argued so much. I mean, so many mothers and daughters have a sort of relationship like that, where there's a lot of arguing, right? And my mother felt so much regret as a result of this relationship that they had, that everything she was thinking, my God, if I hadn't been, so domineering or so strict or so this or so that or so that. And over the years, I could really notice this change where she became so open-hearted and so accepting of other people, which hadn't been the case before. As a result of this tragedy, something opened up, and she became much lighter as a person. Whereas my father, on the other hand, this affected him in such a deep way that he just closed down, progressively closing down. So you see, they just moved in these opposite directions, the reaction to the same event. So I think we really have to learn how to bounce back, and we have to also learn how to remove so much heaviness from ourselves. There's techniques for that. See, one of the things with heartfulness is meditation, which helps us in one way, in many ways actually. But then there's another technique we have, which we call cleaning. Cleaning is something where we remove so much of the emotional burdens that we accumulate. Emotional burden doesn't just mean something dramatic and intense. It's something, anytime you have a thought about another person, that thought will always be in the slightly negative or slightly positive. It's not hardly ever just a neutral thought. If your reaction to that person is neutral, you don't even think about them, right? So if you're thinking about them, there's some tinge of positivity or negativity, and it can vary in its intensity. It can be hugely negative. I hate this person, right? Or a little bit. So this means that thought tends to be tinged with emotion. It has sort of a positive or negative charge to it in a sense, right? And then so these reactions that we have, they leave their traces on us. We form these emotions, and these emotions sit there in us, create a kind of heaviness, I think. But they stay within us, and we know that they stay within us because they can be re-triggered again by future occurrences. You have some bad experience with one person. Later on, you meet somebody who even physically resembles that person you didn't like. And automatically, without them having done anything to you, you say, I don't like them, right? They didn't do anything. They could be your best friend, but automatically we close down at that moment. So as a result, this means that our emotional reactions kind of condition us and act as filters in the future. They filter us. They act as filters so that we're not able to actually unwilling to perceive people as they are, situations as they are, reality as it is. So we have to remove these burdens. And so this is one of the things that we do with this heartfulness cleaning technique. It's a thing we just sit at the end of every day for a few minutes, do this exercise, and feel the lightness that comes. It's something you don't have to believe in it or accept it. You just feel this lightness. Even if you totally disagree with every theory that I'm saying, if you feel the lightness and the joy that comes as a result of that, you may even just do it for that reason, So that becomes something that helps us to move on from things and helps us to be more resilient when we remove that emotional residue that crops up with so many circumstances as a result of so many incidents. So
So in a very real way, it's a way to let go of the emotional.
Yes, but that doesn't actually solve the other problem that I was mentioning, this ego thing and this defensiveness and this being willing to change my approach when necessary, rather than being so rigid and saying I'm right, I'm always right. Because if we're always right, then actually we'll always be wrong, I think,
That's true.
So
So my final question I have is, since we are... so can you demystify meditation? What is this heartfulness meditation? How is it different from so many other types of meditations? And there's also this buzzword, mindfulness. So...
yeah.
What is this about?
How many people here have meditated before? So many. I'm sorry, I'm really surprised. That's very unusual proportion, I have to say. Okay, good. So it's good because you have some previous, experience which you can use to as sort of a foundation to, I don't know, conclude something about what you're going to experience today. Okay, why not? I think that with those who have meditated before, you'll be able to answer your own question, what's different about heartfulness? Because now you're going to experience it, and having experienced something else, you'll be able to form your own conclusion about what's different about it. That's the best way. You could really make a study, you know? You could, if you really were interested, if this was something you're seriously interested in, you could try so many kinds of meditation. And you do each one only one at a time. You know, so you really get what the effects are for that. And, you know, 1 week this, 1 week that, 1 week the next thing. And see for yourself what makes one thing different from the other. And what thing resonates with you, actually. My perspective on, you know, what's unique about heartfulness, there's so many things that I find unique. But we can understand, you know, one thing I've been saying a lot in this last week. Those who have tried different kinds of meditation before may be aware that oftentimes people associate a practice of meditation with, actually, they think of it as a practice of observation. Does this resonate with anybody, this idea of observing? Because I know in certain very well-known techniques of meditation, the basic instruction is that you simply observe certain things, whether you're observing breath, or you're observing thoughts, or you're observing feelings or sensations, or whatever it may be. Now, why do they ask you to do this? They ask you to do this because we tend to get so carried away with our thoughts and our emotions that we make a mountain out of a molehill. Our pain may be real. No one's saying that anyone's pain is unreal. But then we make it into real suffering by focusing on it, and, you know, or we take possibilities in life and we fantasize about them so much that we sort of veer off away from reality there too. In so many ways with our minds, we can just, like wild horses, you know? So therefore they ask you to somehow disassociate yourself from it. And you make yourself an observer, right? You make yourself an observer and separate yourself from the actual experience in some way. This is, I think, the theory behind that approach. And this is good, but I also think that, you know, if you've ever heard of something called the observer effect, which is something you find in quantum science, right? Observer effect is a very simple thing. There's nothing complicated or mystical about it at all. When you're dealing with something that's very subtle, for instance, a subatomic particle, right? It's so small that anything can affect its behavior. So they try to observe their behavior in the lab. But it's so small that the only way you can observe it, let's say, is by shooting, if you're trying to observe an electron, right? The only way you can observe it is by shooting some other particle at it. You shoot a photon at the electron. But now actually you've changed its behavior. It's like shooting a cannonball at the thing. It veers off course. It completely changes its behavior, right? So at that moment, your technology is so obtrusive that the act of observation now creates a secondary effect in the experiment. I hope this is clear, right? The act of observation is interfering with the thing you're trying to observe. The same thing happens when we try this observation with the mind, because this mind is also so subtle that now if you try to, let's say, let me observe my thoughts, this act of observation is a new thought, right? And it creates a new effect in the mind. So rather than the whole mind, this whole system calming itself down, we're actually injecting new energy into the system and perpetuating the thing, but in a different direction than before. So what we actually recommend is not be an observer. It's a subtle difference. Not be an observer, but a witness. Is it the same thing? It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all, because an observation is active. I'm focusing on something. I'm attempting to observe, right? Witnessing, I'm not trying to observe. I witness because I cannot help but witness. I'm not trying to witness. It just passes in front of me and I happen to witness this thing. I happen to see this thing. So the difference here is we're moving from this active thinking, active observation, moving from that to heartful feeling. Because feeling, you're not doing anything. You're completely receptive. You're just receiving this information. You're feeling, right? You're receptive. Some stimulus comes, you perceive it. You're not saying, let me see this stimulus, let me see this experience. No, you're just there, and you sense it. So one is much more active, other one is much more passive, right? Thinking versus feeling, active versus non-active. So heartfulness meditation is all about going more to the feeling side, right? We're not trying to stop thinking. You can't stop this thinking. It stops by itself. But though your thoughts may be going on in the background, like wallpaper, let them be like wallpaper, or somebody else's conversation that's nearby you, you put your attention on your heart. You put your attention on your heart and see what feeling, see you start becoming sensitive to feeling, and see what experience this turns into. So this is kind of what heartfulness is about. And in that case, you truly become a witness, and the same goal of moving yourself, separating yourself, getting some distance from all of the stuff that you're trying to get distance from, that same goal is accomplished, but in a different way. I hope this makes sense. A little roundabout way of explaining things, but
I think it would be even more wonderful if you could give us a demo.
yeah,
If
it would be more wonderful, yes. For me too. Okay, so here we're going to meditate. As I said, we meditate on the heart. Meaning what? You know, I said in the beginning that this meditation is so simple. Again, as a violinist, everyone says the music of Mozart is so simple, but everyone has the most difficult time trying to play it. Why is that? Because we are complicated. We're trying to do something simple, but we're complicated, so all of a sudden it becomes difficult. There's very little to this meditation. When I first tried it, I thought, this can't possibly do anything. There's nothing, what is it anyway? See, because the person told me something like this, what I'm going to tell you. Here we presume that there's some light present in the heart. No, why? It doesn't matter, we can talk about that afterwards. If anyone wants to know after we meditate, they can ask me and we can go into that. But you presume that there's some light present in the heart. And do you try to see it? No. Do you try to imagine it, visualize it? No. That would be just using your imagination. It can be perceived, but again, this is something that you perceive only through feeling. And so therefore the heart, again. That's where we feel things. So we presume that there's light there. We almost would say that we put our attention there on the heart in order to feel it. But even that is too much. To put your attention on your heart, it's too active. You know, you're disrupting things already. So all we do is we presume that our heart, that our attention is already centered in our heart without trying to put our attention there. We presume that our attention is already there in the heart. And we presume that light is already present in the heart. These are basically two things that we suppose, two things that we presume. And then we just wait and see what kind of, experience, subtle inner state, gradually sort of emerges over the course of our meditation. It's a very simple thing. There's nothing to it. So just presume that your attention's there in your heart. Presume that light is there, and see what happens. That's all. Okay? So we'll do that. You see what happens, Let's just take it as an experiment. Also, this light you can take as an experiment. You don't have to believe that there's light there. But at least treat it as a hypothesis, which means that you can entertain it for the sake of the experiment. Okay. So before we meditate, we'll do two things. First, I'll kind of lead you through a guided relaxation where I'll speak. Relax this part of the body, relax that part of the body, like that. After that, I'll ask you to start meditation. Then we'll meditate silently for about 10 minutes. And I'll tell you when it's over. and then let's see what happens. Okay. First thing, most important thing, not most important thing, but a very important thing, is to put the cell phones on silent.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say that.
Mine's charging. Let me make sure it's on silent. Okay. And sit comfortably, as much as possible. Yes?
There are so many thoughts going on. I mean, I cannot think of focusing and finding that light in my heart. How do I-
Okay, so she says, one question has come already. She says there's so many thoughts coming already. We haven't even started meditation, but already they're disturbing you. And she can't even think of focusing on the heart. Okay. First thing is I never asked you to focus on the heart.
No, I want to find the light inside the heart.
Just see what happens. Thoughts will come. We don't have any illusions that you're going to be in a thoughtless state. Okay? Question is, these thoughts, let them come. That doesn't mean you have to pursue them and, overly entertain them, right? But if you start to drive away your thoughts and think, oh, go away, I should not be having thoughts, I'm meditating, it'll be counterproductive. Because it's like this Newton's law, where every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Meaning if you try to negate your thoughts, they'll come back. But it's not an equal and opposite reaction here. It's a disproportionate reaction. Because you try to negate your thoughts, it will come back to you, What's that line you ever see Goodfellas? There's a Joe Pesci thing where he talks about, is it Goodfellas? I don't know, where he talks about, like, if they come at you with a knife, you come back at them with a gun. And like the whole, just keep escalating the thing. That's kind of what it's like. You try to negate one thought, and then 3 thoughts come back. And then you try to negate those 3 thoughts, and another 6 thoughts come back. So this whole practice of trying to fight with your thoughts is counterproductive. So instead, let them come. But the whole thing will calm down on its own, not because you've driven them out. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I want to know the relationship between a mastery growth method and the meditation.
The which method?
The relationship between mastering growth method and the meditation.
Yeah, we can talk about that right afterwards. Okay. So please close your eyes. Very gently, and bring your attention to your toes. You can move your toes and relax them. You can relax your feet. And you can even imagine that there is a current of energy, of healing energy, entering through the soles of your feet and relaxing them. And that this energy gently moves up your body, relaxing you as it moves, relaxing your ankles, relaxing your lower legs, relax your knees, relax your upper legs. Relax your hips and waist, your abdomen, and relax all the muscles of your chest. Let your whole back relax, from the base of the spine all the way up to the shoulders. And let your shoulders relax completely. Let them feel like they're melting. And relax your upper arms, your triceps, bicep muscles, elbows. Relax all the muscles of your forearms. Your wrists and hands, fingers, and you can even feel energy flowing out from your fingertips. Now, relax the muscles of your neck, your jaws. Relax your mouth, your tongue, and all the muscles of your face. Let your eyes relax. Let there be a lot of softness around your eyes, and your ears and earlobes, and all the way up to the top of your head. And gently become aware of your entire body. And see, is there any place that needs your attention, that needs to relax even more? And so relax any muscle where you feel tension, any area. Let your whole body be completely relaxed. And now, supposing that your attention is already there in the heart, centered in the heart, where light from your source is present, which naturally and automatically is drawing you inward. And please meditate. That's all. No. Why don't you remain with closed eyes for just another minute? And see how you feel now that meditation is over, is finished. Gradually, as you feel ready, you can open your eyes. The idea being, almost try to remain in meditation, though your eyes are opening. We're trying to bring out this meditative state into the wakeful state, so it can remain with us. We have to kind of gradually come out of meditation because you can just fracture that so easily. Whereas the entire point is to create a sort of ongoing meditativeness.
Thank you, Joshua. There's some sort of stillness you feel. Do you have any questions?
You have a question, right? You have a question?
Yeah, my question is, I wonder how they master the growth mindset, how this related to meditation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Because when I do meditation earlier, I didn't think anything. I do feel good and peaceful. But once I come back to active, right, it's really the space, suddenly different. I just feel good when I do meditation.
well, it's good. Do you want to take your microphone? It's good that you feel good when you do meditation. Now, how is that going to affect our lives? See, this is a question. And I think that there's no point in doing meditation if it doesn't have a lasting positive effect, right? And otherwise we're just enjoying, 20 minutes, an hour, and okay, that's great, but what does it lead to, And here I think, I was earlier, I just came from Google in the morning, where they had a session, and here they call it mastering the growth mindset. There they called it a productive pause, right? And, okay, so this productive pause, they wanted me to explain that. And so I thought, like a wagon wheel with its axle, right? Or whatever, why wagon wheel? We're in the 21st century. Okay, a car wheel with the axle, right? And in the middle of the axle, there's space. And the circumference of that wheel and the circumference of the axle, they're in motion, they're spinning. But that space in the middle is not spinning, right? So, and the entire thing is actually moving forward on the road as well. So this idea that they had of a pause was something that I don't think it's a pause, because a pause is a temporary thing, right? But this is something where there's a constant stillness and constant movement at the same time. Or where you can say like a hurricane, where there's the eye, which is still. In the middle of the hurricane, there's this stillness, and then everything around it is swirling. So I think, in our lives, we bring meditativeness into our lives by remaining in silence, by remaining in this oasis within ourselves of peace. And, though there's so much going on and swirling around and chaos and challenges and everything, it becomes very possible to handle these things because of that inner stability and inner balance that we have, right? And that's why meditation, that's why I wanted you to come very slowly out of meditation, right? Because meditation is the mother of this meditative state. It's at that moment when you're coming out very slowly that meditation can become a meditative state that's pervasive, that can carry you through your day. But growth mindset, even a growth mindset is artificial, because growth is natural, right? You don't need a mindset for growth, But, in no other species you'll not find a cow adopting a growth mindset, though it may grow in its own way, in a natural way.
Very high, but we just don't know.
Huh?
Because they don't tell us.
Maybe they don't tell us. But human beings, though, there's always this aspect of our having to decide to agree with our natural program, because we have free will. Because we have free will, there may be a natural program for us, but we have to both recognize it and accept it, and then go along with it. So there's this added wrinkle when it comes to the human mind, right? So if growth is a natural thing, that means we have to accept the need for it, and then we have to participate in it and find out how to participate in it. And this whole thing becomes almost very unnatural, right? So that's the state in which we find ourselves, I think, as human beings. And then the possibility arises to, of course, go towards naturalness and take this extra layer of artificiality out of the picture, and because that's what people call the flow state, where you have a basketball player who's not deciding and calculating at which moment should I shoot the ball, but in a very intuitive way they just go for it, and it's right, or a musician or something like that. So we have to go towards naturalness in that way. I find that meditation helps us achieve that flow state in a very easy way. So and also it helps us, before we're in a flow state, it helps us recognize what we should pursue, because it calms our mind, because it, takes away a lot of the confusion that's swirling around. And doesn't get rid of thoughts, but it gets rid of the useless thoughts or irrelevant thoughts. It creates some regulation in the mind, so that we become more easily able to perceive what should I do, what should I not do. This clarity, this discrimination can dawn. And with that discrimination, I can know this is the growth trajectory, and that, is like fool's gold over there. Follow this, don't follow that. This is where my potential is that I can expand upon, not that. So it helps us in many ways, actually.